And Stanley Kubrick is really good at that, and he does it again with this movie. So yeah,
you ready to pull it into the negatives?
Yeah, sure.
All right, let's do it. You want to get us started?
Yeah, sure.
Noah?
All right. I will say one negative that really stood out to me was that they only focused on one drill instructor.
Okay.
That actually kind of not pissed me off, but that was like annoying to me because throughout my experience in boot camp, I actually had 3 different types of drill instructor or 3 different senior drill instructors.
Yeah.
A whole long story about that, but the most drill instructors that had like the actual impact on me and that were actually most involved with all the boot camp were my normal DIs. My SDI, my senior drill instructor, that was the role that the drill instructor was playing in the movie, the senior drill instructor. He did not have the biggest effect on me, especially with like the first month and a half. Like, he was just not there. Eventually, he was more there, but he just wasn't like the biggest effect because the other drill instructors are there with you every second, every minute, every day, no matter what you're doing. And they're all constantly yelling at you, and it builds that. And so the fact that they only showed the drill instructors during the Black Friday scene, and
What scene was that?
That was the introduction. The Black Friday is the introduction
that's
to
the
all
scene,
of them.
the very first scene, or the second scene, I guess.
Yeah, and then there's also the wake-up scene. That's the only time you see the drill instructors. And you never hear them talk, you never hear them anything.
Yeah,
that really put my perspective down on that and how that was really not realistic in that part because he was doing drill, he was doing PT, he was doing everything. They have different types of hats, like the kill hat, the drill hat, the knowledge hat for different types of drill instructors
right.
to be able to like shift that and everything. And that kind of was like that.
Yeah, I see that for sure.
Yeah, definitely. And I think another big one was actually the music. The music was not there.
I don't remember a single note.
Exactly. There was like scenes with no music at all.
Yeah.
And then there were scenes with music. And the last battle scene when they finally killed the sniper.
That music was pretty good. I was about to point that out.
The music was good until they added the synthesizers.
Oh, I see.
Because they were in that time of movie period. They used that a lot, and I tell, and that was just, it was kind of that little high pitchy stuff, and it didn't fit well. The other stuff in the background was good.
I enjoyed when they're walking through before they shoot her, when they're walking through and it's kind of that eerie music. That was solid. That was the most notable part of the soundtrack. I will say, and I'll be interested to hear what y'all think about this. I don't know if there needed to be a lot of like rousing music or anything because it's such a dark movie. But I guess I think there could have been a little bit more.
The music. I think what he's trying to say is that the music didn't add.
Yeah, it didn't. It was just kind of there.
Music makes a movie.
Yeah,
it really does. Like you can't have a music without music. It's just like it's really there, and I didn't feel that. It didn't give me.
Yeah,
music draws a lot of people in. It didn't really draw me into that.
Yeah,
and that's one big takeaway for me.
I agree.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with the music thing. Music was not there.
Other than that one little part at the end there, but other than that.
And this is one negative I'm going to give, but this is like a big negative that really drew the movie down for me in it. It's that the movie lacked a lot of basic narrative elements that a story needs. And you were talking about this earlier. We do not know where the characters came from. We don't know,
except the Cowboys from Texas.
Why, we don't know why they're there. We don't know why they want to be there. We don't know what they want, what their dreams are, what their hopes are. We have no idea who they are. It's really hard to invest into the characters, especially since in the first half of the movie, they hardly say anything.
Exactly.
And so it's super hard, and that's why we were praising the drill instructor, because that's the only guy we ever heard talk. Everybody else was just, and I get the realism and everything.
I know, that's what I was going to ask, yeah.
If you're going to tell a story, you have to be bought in a little bit. So I would almost wish the movie started before they went to boot camp. We get to see why they're going to boot camp, what they're hoping to get out of boot camp, and there was these tantalizing little moments where you could almost see into it, like when forgot his name, Joker refused to say that he loved Mother Mary, right? And he stood super firm on that, and you're like, wait a minute, where's that coming from? I feel like there's a story there, but then we never hear the story
because that's the scene where it comes back again. No. That's the thing. So it happened, and it's a big part. What made him a squad leader, and boot camp, but then it never comes back again. It was like just useless. It was just for that scene. I was like, okay.
It was just there, and that was like a moment. And then another moment where it's like this is when he's got the Born to Kill and then the peace sign.
Oh, the duality.
People keep asking him, or like, what's that for? And he finally says the duality of man. I'm like, man, I feel like there's a story there, but you just won't tell us about this character.
Yeah, I agree, actually.
And so,
with the one scene, the first one you were talking about, though, I did appreciate that scene in and of itself, because it kind of shows, that's like, he shows his leadership, and he shows that he's not, he knows, he literally says in the scene, he says, if I say something else, you're just going to beat me harder. Yeah. It's kind of like he's saying, all right, I've learned what your game is, I'm not going to just fall 100%. Into the trap again, but I will. So that scene in and of itself was cool, but I do agree that it should have. It wasn't cool to like learn where he got this like kind of that personality trait.
Yeah, and other narrative elements, like there's this question that kept coming back to my mind as I was watching this movie. And it was, what is this movie about? And I could never really answer that question. Like, is the movie about Vietnam? Not really.
Half of it doesn't even take place.
That's really true.
Is the movie about boot camp? Kind of, but not really.
I think that if I had to... do we want to save it for themes, or do we want to go ahead and just mention what we would...
Save it for themes, okay, I'd say. And so, like, the movie ends up feeling more like a documentary than a movie.
100%, because they don't get you emotionally attached to the characters. Like, if any one of them would have died... I would have been like, oh well.
Who was that?
I'm like, I would not have cared. But like, there's other movies I've been on like, no, like, because you're emotionally attached.
Exactly.
They don't get you emotionally
attached.
That's
why Black Hawk Down's better.
Exactly.
I will say that was a joke. That was a joke. I joked that this.
Yeah, John. Before we
it is better than Pearl Harbor.
Before we got on air, John was saying it was better than Black Hawk Down. And me and
I was joking.
Like, no,
I was joking.
Yeah, so the lack of.
Although I'm not gonna lie, one of our negatives on that movie is you don't know who the characters are.
Really?
Yes.
Oh shoot!
You don't think about that movie. You really don't.
But here's the thing: I know who Eric Bana is.
Okay. No, but if you think about it, that movie literally. This movie might have been a little bit more worse on that aspect, but actually in that movie we didn't really know.
Well, here's the improvement. Here's the
where's the improvement?
Because I can tell you, you asked me what Black Hawk Down is about. I can tell you it's about this disaster that happened in the movie is very centered on just showing us how terrible the disaster was. And yes, this movie showed us how terrible Vietnam was, and it showed us how hard boot camp was. But like I never got an idea of where they were going with it.
Yeah.
And they never even went anywhere. The movie like just starts super abruptly, and then it like ends super abruptly, and you're left there 100%. Sitting like. I haven't gained anything from what I just watched.
Yeah. To build off of that, the build of the movie was oddly misplaced. Like
the what?
Like the climax of the movie was at the very end of the movie.
Right.
That just like I
it should be a little bit
exactly. It should be before, and then it should go down a little.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, because the climax at the movie was literally at the last like 5 minutes.
I will say,
like, whoa,
to bounce off of this negative, I will say, I think one thing that really holds the movie back in terms of story is the fact that it's two movies in one, basically.
Yeah.
That has 100%. A few of the same characters. I think there's three people who are in the first half and the second half. Joker. Literally two. Joker and Cowboy are the only two.
Yep.
Everybody else is only in one half. And so I feel like that's but I feel like the big problem is that so at the end of the first half of the movie, Pyle has this whole thing where he's psychologically out of it. He's messed up.
Right.
He's screwed. He kills the drill sergeant before killing himself, and it's a really great scene. It's a really well acted scene. It has a good
That's the best part of the movie. Honestly.
Yeah, that was really good.
It's the climb. It's
kind of actually invested in that.
I know.
From a narrative.
Yeah, I know, because you've seen that their relationship has been so bad, and you really buy into that, and you feel it, and it has emotional payoff. So then it literally goes from that scene to a hooker coming up to solicit Joker and Rafterman in like downtown, in like downtown Da Nang.
That's crazy.
And so there needed to be like a scene or two in between of like maybe it could have been like Joker getting shipped out and like having some like PTSD over what he saw. It never comes back.
It never even references that event ever again.
Like it's like Joker should be as messed up, and you don't get a sense of that.
And it's crazy that
and that's a problem.
Kyle,
I will say.
like was the person that you're most emotionally attached to because you're focused on him from the beginning when you're getting haircuts. You see him, and then afterwards he's the most getting picked on. You see him talking to what's his name?
Joker.
You see him talking to Joker. You see that they focus on him multiple shots of how he's feeling, what's happening. Like, you're more
his fear to get
exactly.
over the thing.
You're more emotionally attached to Pyle than anyone else, and then they go ahead and kill him, and then don't do that to anyone else.
It's crazy, bro. It's crazy.
Except Cowboy. I will say one character that dies, like I mentioned, that I did feel a little bit of emotional payoff for was Cowboy, because you have known him for the whole movie a little bit, and when you don't get to know him super well, but you have seen him, and you get to know.
There's no other characters to attach.
Yeah, I know. So when his death does feel. I felt a little bit when he dies, because But other than that, y'all are right. But I will say I disagree with one thing that you said, and that's that on what it's about. I would say that really what it's about is just kind of like man and his like reactions to like catastrophe.
But that's just like super general.
It is very broad. So I will say it is true. It is a very broad theme, and I think one of my negatives, which I'll go on and talk about in just a second, is that it doesn't. There's a lot of stuff this movie does not hit on that it should, and but I think that's what it would be about. So I don't think it's completely meaningless, but it definitely doesn't. It doesn't. It's a very broad theme.
When I say what the movie's about, I'm not asking it in a rhetorical sense. What are the themes that this movie is grappling with? It's like if somebody walked up to you, hey, like, I saw this movie, Full Metal Jacket, what is it about? And, like, what were you going to say to them? Like, if you said it's about the Vietnam War, yes, but no. Like, it's hard to, like, get it. If you told them, like, it's about man's struggles with catastrophe, they'd be like, what?
Any movie could be like that.
Yeah, I know, right?
Titanic. Man's struggles with catastrophe.
It is a very... Well, a negative is that it is a very... It doesn't offer anything new, really, to the Vietnam War genre. I mean, in terms of themes.
Except urban warfare.
In terms of themes, it does have some. Obviously, the whole boot camp that is really cool. That's unique to this movie.
That's the best part of the movie.
Just a little sneak peek. The first half of this movie, I would give like an 8 out of 10. The second hal's going to bring it down. How much
just like
you'll see? Just like Pearl Harbor. Yeah, except it was the opposite. It's the opposite. Y'all will see how much it brings it down at the end with my rating. But do you want me to give my big negative though?
Yeah,
it's kind of a separate thing.
Yeah.
My big, and it's what I just mentioned it. It's the fact that it has a lot of themes in this movie that are kind of touched on. It never goes into them.
Yep.
The whole thing with Joker's what should be Joker's PTSD is never explored.
Nope.
And that's a problem. And then once again, this all goes back, I think, to the whole thing, how it's like 2 movies in one. That's just kind of hard to mesh those together. And there's really no connection between the first and the second half. It just kind of like, it's almost like, oh yeah, that's never happened. Now we're in Vietnam.
Yeah, I know.
On. And that's a problem. I think that really my biggest negative is just that they needed to have a middle. I would have honestly 100%. Enjoyed if this movie was like maybe 15 minutes longer, and it could have been a few scenes, because it's not a very long movie. It's not even 2 hours. They had room to put 15 minutes of footage of transition between the first half and the second half, and you could have learned more about Joker, and you could have gotten more insight into his character. You could have. I mean, what's the how did the Marines react to the fact that their senior drill instructor was killed?
Got shot.
Like, it's just like, I mean, I guess nobody really cared. They were just like, I mean, there could have been like a scene where Joker was like at the guy's funeral or something. Yeah. I mean, there could have been some serious emotional payoff in between the first and the second half. Or build up to the second half, which would have made the second half a better movie.
As you pointed out, it's so true. When you see the first scene in the second half, I was sitting there, I was like, what's happening?
The first half of that scene is not.
I was trying to figure out, like, where are we?
It's kind of.
If you decided to go to the bathroom and come back, you'd be like, whoa, where am I? What did I miss?
I will say that scene in of itself is actually kind of humorous, but it's not a good follow-up to the scene.
I thought they were in America for a while. Is this America?
It does have probably the most famous, like, line in the movie, which is, he's like, me so horny.
And she, like, memorized 3 lines in English. She just says them over and over again.
Me love you, long time. That is
probably... You everything.
You have everything.
It was funny.
Yeah, it was a fun... See, that's the thing about this movie.
It was a good scene. They just put it on the wrong time.
That's the thing. My other negative on this movie is just that there's a lot of things that it could have been so much better. I still think it's a pretty good movie, somewhere between 6 and 7. But I think that it could have been a lot better. It had some stuff there was stuff they could have done that could have pushed it up.
Yeah,
to
I agree.
Maybe even an 8.
100%.
Because the first half sets it up well. they just don't, and it kind of just goes doesn't drop like a rock, but it just kind of teeters down. It meanders, and then there's a pretty good final scene, but the problem is the final scene is the climax, like you said, and then it just ends with them singing Mickey Mouse.
Yeah, and it ends so abruptly, and like from a narrative perspective, we have no idea what's at stake, and why we should care.
I know,
and the events the word that keeps coming to mind, they feel so random. Mm-hmm. It feels like one random scene after another, and they'll be like, oh, what if we just had another hooker show up? Yeah. You know, and it's like, why? You know?
I will say, I did enjoy how they used some of the random scenes, as we're calling them, to kind of hit on like some things that were been happening at the time, like racism. Sure. That was cool. They did depict this kind of that 60s culture pretty well. That's a positive. That we didn't mention.
But that's what I mean when I say it feels more like a documentary than a movie.
Yeah. The history on it was really well done. It really was. They did their research.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's just there should have been, I will agree, there should have been more story. It's too thin. A lot of times we talk about movies being too fat. This one's too thin. It needed more.
Yeah, and it was just packed in between with 16.
But one theme that I think that really they were touching on, but they never went into it, is you mentioned it with like the duality of man. At the end, Joker has this narration. They keep on talking about this theme of there's this line they keep on coming up with. You're gonna. I don't want to end up in a world of like shit, and it's like a pretty. Then what they mean by it is something really deep. Mm-hmm. It feels like, but you never understand what that means. The drill sergeant says it, and it's kind of like, man, that's an interesting line. Like and then at the end, Joker says it in his final narration, but it's like. We haven't explored that at all with you, so we don't. Why should I? It doesn't mean anything to me because he's like, I know the last line of the movie. He says in narration, he says, I know that I am in a world of shit. So, whatever, you can bleep that. Whatever. SH is kind of weird to say that, but he says that, and then he says, yes, I am, but like. I know I'm not scared anymore, but we don't know why he shouldn't be scared anymore because we just haven't gotten any character development.
I know.
So that's just there could have been more to this movie.
The movie at times wants to be super detached, and at other times it wants to be super emotional.
Yeah,
and I agree.
Yeah,
I really do agree with that. I feel like the first boot camp part and the second part were completely different directors.
Yeah.
Because the first boot camp part, they had the emotional attachment. They had all the there was good dialogue actually. I wish there was a little bit more, but there was good dialogue. Everything was like I'd give the first part like a really good rating. The second part, they started it off horribly and they ended it horribly. No emotional attachment. I really felt like that. Like the ending. The ending when they're singing Mickey Mouse could have been so powerful.
But it wasn't.
You had no idea where they were going.
Did you ever sing that?
No, we did not. But you like if there would have been like even with the climax being
he just says we're going to like huddle down.
Even with it being at the end, I feel like they could have pulled that off if there was like a cliffhanger where they're like, all right, you need to go here. Blah blah blah. Most likely you're gonna die. Whatever they would do, and then they're starting to sing that on the way there.
You're so right. That small change could have changed the dynamic of the ending so much. Instead of like we're going to bed, it's like
exactly. Because literally they said we're going to the creek to sleep, and they're singing Mickey Mouse to go.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. And then it ends with a Paint It Black by AC/DC. AC/DC is no. That's the Rolling Stones. It ends with
I just thought myself, well, it's over now. I guess
it does have a good. I will say, okay. I just wanted to point something out. We were talking about the music earlier. Mm-hmm. There is no real great soundtrack in terms of original music. I did enjoy though some of the music songs of the time that they played that really did immerse you in the '60s and made you feel like you're in Vietnam. It had as I call it, it had a lot of Vietnam music, like in Forrest Gump, like those type of songs that they play. Same thing here. I thought that music, the music that they just take from the real world and put in there, is pretty cool.
Yeah,
anyway, sorry.
Yeah. There was one part when they were playing like an actual song. I forget what song it was called.
Bird is the word?
Yeah, Bird is the word. It was good. But it went on a little bit long, and I started getting confused because then like this tank started going off, and then it started going with the music. I was like, "What is happening?"
That was weird. Yeah,
it got kind of weird. They didn't really know how to mix.
There is a really good scene though that I think we should point out in terms of realism after that, where they're interviewing the soldiers, and in that scene also where they're filming it.
That was like a good scene.
This was like the first real war where it was covered by like news, like live, and that was a really cool aspect of this movie that they got right. historically, and I think that was cool. That was really cool. That was well done by Kubrick. There.
Yeah. Before we slide out of the negatives, I think there's something that we'd all like to talk about, which is the ending battle, which I think has a lot of problems.
Yeah, a lot of problems, but also has some bright spots. It could have, but we can talk about it. Yeah.
So. Yes, it is very realistic, I'm sure, but it's realistic. There's this old joke from The Onion, which is like there's an older version of the Babylon Bee, in which it said, new Call of Duty game out. It's so realistic that you have to spend hours waiting for orders. And I feel like that's the same kind of realistic that this movie is.
It's almost like it can be a little bit boring. It's so realistic.
And the final scene is so, like,
long.
They spend this entire time fighting this sniper. And it's this, like, 14-year-old girl, and they just are so disjointed. They seem to be so dumb at times.
It's true. It's like they were good throughout the entire movie until then. And then even when the squad leader died and they got a new one, they were still dysfunctional.
Yeah.
And the thing is, they're Marines.
Yeah.
Knowing from everything they've been trained through, they 100% should have known what to do.
Mm-hmm.
Not been standing up in the middle of a window to get shot.
Yeah.
Not like the squad leader was just, that's what pissed me off, because they did good at it, but like it pissed me off because he was sending multiple of his men in there. He did not care because he didn't know what to do. He's like, I'm just gonna wait for backup because I don't want to die. I don't want to do all this.
Yeah.
Because he didn't know what to do.
They were like comically dumb.
Yes.
Like just to point out some of the things that he was alluding to. You know, sent one guy into a kill box to get shot.
It happens to be the black guy.
Then sent another singular guy into the kill box to get shot. And then, like, they wait for a while, and then they just keep shooting at the walls, like, so much. Like, if you've ever seen that scene from Predator, where, have you seen where the Predator comes out, and they're all like, oh! Like, they do that a ton, and then they just keep sitting there, and then they're like, oh, wait, we're going in. And then they run in and stand in front of these windows to get shot, and it's like, oh my, it's not.
And then they use smoke, finally.
And then it's like, why didn't you use the smoke earlier? What?
See, that was like when the scene got good, because they actually knew what to do and they were doing it.
Yeah. Except
for like when they're kind of like going through there and the guy dropped his rifle. Okay, but anyways, other than that, like the guys going in there to go save him, do like attack evac, and they're shooting all around him.
Yes.
They're not covering for him. They're shooting at him, cross-firing. They have no idea where they're shooting at him. Like that's one thing I saw. Like, how
I will say one thing,
not getting shot right now.
Like if he's running towards the wall, like there was probably like an outline of him in bullets where they were shooting around him,
and they were all in a line. Literally, there was no formation whatsoever, no flanks, no anything. There was like no plan. No. Even when they went in through there to do stuff, there was no plan.
Mm-hmm. No, and, like, we're not saying, and I'm sure y'all agree that like the Marines have to just like kick butt the whole movie. But the thing is that we're fighting one 14-year-old Viet Cong. It's not like they were fending off waves of invaders, or even like the same amount. They were just totally incompetent and getting taken out by this one person.
I will say, you mentioned that, I think that honestly it wasn't like a problem that a few of them get killed by the sniper. And it actually has a kind of an emotional payoff a little bit when you figure out there's a freaking girl.
Yeah.
And it's just kind of shocking. It's like you don't see it coming unless you've seen the movie, obviously. And did you see it coming that it was a girl? No. So I think that was actually pretty cool because the Viet Cong did use a lot of women fought for them. And like they were not scared to like kill people. But I think the problem is that they do act a little bit too foolishly and too abruptly. Then it just doesn't seem like something Marines would do. Like throughout the whole movie, they kept that kind of realism aspect with how the Marines would act, how they would converse with one another, how they would do all their formations and stuff, and then they kind of just abandon all of it at the end, and it's like we're just all gonna not do what we've been taught.
You got like this just like ridiculous musced up guy with the giant machine gun with like the chains just like all of it was like crazy.
It's like a rainbow, but just
it was. And then as the final turd on top of that cake and the ending of the scene was when they shoot the. Well, they actually have to back up to when he drops the rifle and then doesn't pick it back up for whatever reason. And then they shoot the girl. And what it's supposed to be, in all fairness, is an emotional moment in which he's fighting with himself, trying to decide if he should end this girl's life prematurely so she doesn't have to be in pain or just leave her there. But because there's been no emotional buildup and there's no music and there's nothing... Well, actually, there's but it's not good.
It's fine. It's average.
What it actually comes off as is a bunch of children, like... like children as in like just not understanding the situation, just standing around this dying person for like 5 minutes, just staring at her and being like, what should we do? And then just like looking at each other, and it's like, I was like, just like do something and get out of there. Like seriously, she was sitting there and like she started going, shoot me. She was like comically
for
long.
so long.
Yes.
And that scene was too long.
When she was shooting at him behind that pillar, and he did not drop his rifle. He threw it. He goes, literally throws his rifle. And then even when he shoots the girl, he does not go to pick up his rifle. He goes with his pistol to there. Literally everything throughout I learned through boot camp, everything that even in the movie betrays they learned through boot camp. Your rifle is more important than you. Mm-hmm. They don't care about you. They care about your rifle. Mm-hmm. Because they're not going to use you to kill someone. They're going to use your rifle to kill someone. Mm-hmm. Like, your rifle is a part of you. You're married to your rifle. Your rifle is your best friend. Like, if you somehow lose your weapon, you will spend your entire day, hours, minutes, seconds looking for that rifle. Like, that is a part of you. You sleep with it. You eat with it. Like, everything you're doing is with that rifle. And him leaving that
was just so weird.
It's just like, I'm like, okay, no, that would never happen.
So I enjoyed the final battle scene maybe a little bit more. I do agree with most of what we're saying. One thing that we haven't mentioned yet that kind of bothered me that I thought was overdone was the slow-mo when they kept on getting shot. I thought it could have. The first time he gets shot, it was fine, but I thought they honestly could have been more. It got a little bit more cheesy as they kept on getting shot. I thought that it could have been more realistic and like painful as a viewer if it had just not been slow-mo.
I know it would just like be at random times they'd be talking and then at random intervals there would just be a shot of someone going
and then you hear and then all they'll go all they'll go they're like ceasefire. Literally did that like 5 times. Ceasefire. Ceasefire, like it's non-stop the same thing over and over again.
Anyway, are there any other negatives? Because
that was it for me.
I wanted to say one thing. So, like, just to sum up what mine was that there could have been more to this movie.
Yeah,
it has their themes are there. They just don't go into them enough, and they just don't explore. But I will say I did disagree with one thing y'all said.
Okay.
When it comes to like the character development, I think the themes are underdeveloped. But I think the characters. Honestly, I think that what they were going for is what they did, where it was like what we got, where it's like these just guys that you don't know that are just thrust into boot camp and then they get spit out to Vietnam. And I don't really think that you were supposed to like understand their backstories much. I think it was they were supposed to be kind of just like these dudes, and they're thrust into this really bad situation in Vietnam. First in boot, well, I call it a bad situation. But, it's kind of tough situation, and then into a bad situation. Yeah. And I really didn't think that there needed to be a lot of character development. I don't think that was just part of what they were going for. So that's not really a negative to me. I actually thought it added to that realistic tone they were going for, but I do agree that there were themes that they should have hit on.
Yeah,
the duality of man, the whole PTSD thing with Joker, which is not there at all. That obviously would have been, and then the third one is the whole thing about those are the 2 big ones. But then there were probably several others that I'm not thinking of at the moment.
Yeah, to piggyback off of what you said, I do agree that their whole main thing is to show that like there's these people that they just got thrown into this because they wanted to fight for the country. They got thrown into that, and
I understand that.
Yeah, I really do agree on that. But there have been movies like American Sniper.
That's a good one.
The entire end, so the entire beginning, you see his backstory. You get emotionally attached because of like his girlfriend cheating on him, and then he goes and joins. And then from there on, everything is focused on that. But they got you emotionally attached in the beginning. Yeah. And like Jarhead's kind of like this.
Oh, have you seen Jarhead?
Yeah, Jarhead's kind of like this movie. Where it's focused on boot camp, but they get you emotionally attached in boot camp.
I will say I didn't.
So then after you're still attached. Next time, I just feel like they could have done a better job.
But I don't think it's not as big of a negative to me. The bigger negative to me is the underdeveloped themes.
Yeah.
Than the underdeveloped characters. I think the characters were honestly fine if they had just explored those themes of the duality of man and how man reacts to to conflicts
I love the characters. It's just they never really talked about them.
If the themes had been better, the characters would have been, I think, better. But I don't think they needed to be more. I wouldn't say they needed to be more developed. I
agree with you on that.
Yeah,
they were good characters, and they did not need to be any more changed. But they just needed to be explained more.
And those themes would have done that.
Yeah,
but they just don't explore them enough. Yeah, that's my biggest negative. And then just it's disconnected into two movies basically, and they're not tied together. It needed a tying together. Yeah, they needed a tie together. 100%. But honestly, just real quick, with Jarhead, next time you're home on leave, we'll have to have you come do Jarhead.
Oh, yeah. I
honestly was not a big fan. That's also a movie about Marines. I was not as big of a fan of that one.
I love that one.
You did? It's more just about the boredom of war, I feel like. But anyway, we'll get into that later. Have you seen that one?
Sounds boring.
Yeah, it's a boring. It was boring to me, but anyway, have you seen Jarhead?
No.
Have you seen American Sniper though?
Yeah.
We'll have to review that one too. Anyway, so that wraps up my negatives.
Yeah, let's roll. I think we should get into history.
You want to themes or history first?
Let's go ahead and get into history. I think there's more. We got more meat to that. We got some conversation. So I've got a couple questions, if you don't mind. First of all, this is something I saw in the movie and was just wondering about. Did you ever have or see a drill sergeant hit someone in the head?
Okay. No. I have not. Well, the story I said where our drill instructors were, so my first set of drill instructors were accused, where they all had assault charges against them.
Dang. Yeah. So this is what I was wondering about.
Yeah, so they all had assault charges against them. One of the recruits accused him of hitting him. Mm-hmm. And then apparently it turned out false, but apparently the recruit started punching his knuckles to the wall to make it look like they got in a fight, punched himself, all sorts of crazy stuff. So I have not personally seen any of them hit anyone, but there have been times where they'd grab you by the shirt, they'd push you against the wall. If you get close to them, there's a thing called arm's distance. If they get close to you, they're gonna push you away. Mm. They don't care. They're big dudes. Because there'd be times where all right, run over here. You're running, you don't see a drill instructor, they put their arm out, and you just get completely smashed to the ground because of it. But you should have known where you were going and how close you were to here. So I would not intentionally punched. But what I personally think about that is that back then, the people that went to boot camp and actually wanted to become a Marine Right. And they were there for a reason. They were not like nowadays. Well, nowadays, I see a lot of wimps. They go there oh no, I can't do this anymore. Oh no, you're hurting me. I'm going to tell on you. It's basically like that. They're like little kids.
If that's the case, I would say this movie did a really good job of showing that people weren't wimps, because I don't know if I could take that verbal abuse that these guys get in this movie. I mean,
the verbal abuse is about the same or worse.
Okay, or
they don't care about verbal abuse.
Okay.
Yeah, oh yeah. I was just wondering, with the change in time since the 1960s until now, I feel like people would be a lot more willing to sue because of that.
Didn't you say that they still will homosexuality is still kind of something they'll kind of
they do it to make you laugh
for or something?
They do it to make you laugh. If you're actually gay or homophobic or anything, they respect that, because then you can do.
I think you mean homosexual. You didn't mean homophobic, did you?
Oh no,
homosexual.
Yeah, homosexual.
Homophobic.
But yeah, so they're not gonna make fun of you for that, kind of, depending on the drill instructor you get, but because of what could happen to them. Because there's a lot of risks now for drill instructors. They are walking on thin ice, but while having to yell at them.
It's crazy.
Because of this generation.
I was thinking about it because we've got this new culture, where you get canceled for anything. And yet these drill instructors, their job is to abuse you, literally to prepare you for war. And I've got a friend of mine who was a Marine a long time ago and who was in Vietnam, who claims that it's soft now and that this isn't good for the Marines because they're going to get PTSD later on, and I was just wondering your thoughts on that.
So for that, actually, I got the opportunity to have breakfast with the colonel of the entire island. So that was really interesting, because he talked to me about his experience too. He went to boot camp 31 years ago. So he was telling me about that. He was saying when he went to boot camp, it was 6 months long.
Okay.
He only got IT'd once.
IT?
That IT is basically initial training. It's basically what they do. They send you out in the sand pit and they just start getting you sweating and everything, and it's what they do to discipline you. Mm-hmm. They only did that to him once.
That's crazy.
During 6 months. With us, I've lost count how many times we've done it happen to us. But the times that they do it to them, they go absolutely insane. Mm-hmm. Like, it's the scariest thing you've ever seen. So, but he was saying, like, from his personal experience, and now him being in charge of the island, nowadays, we are more physically demanded than back then.
Really?
But their standard back then, because, like, he's saying back then, they would be able to smoke cigarettes on weekends, they'd be able to watch movies on Sundays, all this kind of stuff. But the times when they would get disciplined, it was so bad that they would never want to see it or happen again. Here, they had to stop at a limit. Like nowadays, they have to stop at a limit. They can go pretty bad, but they have to stop at a physical limit, physically touching you. So there is a limit there where people are like, okay, you can't do this to me, or I'm gonna request masks. I'm not gonna do all this kind of stuff. So I will say that, but I will say today our Marines are a lot more physically fit.
That's an interesting dynamic there.
100%. It was really interesting to hear too, because back then the Marines that they produced were the people that put up that flag on Iwo Jima, like everything. It was insane.
There you go.
So let's talk a little bit about a few things I wanted to ask you about, specifically things that we see in the movie, and I wanted to see what you thought about it. We talked a little bit about it when we were talking about realism. But by the way, speaking of the verbal abuse, just a little warning. If you watch this movie, there's a lot of profanity. Be prepared. There's... So yeah, you might not want to...
profanity is like 50% of the dialogue.
Yeah, in the first half of the movie, it's definitely... It's like 90% of the movie.
It's 50%
That's
of
just
your
a little discretionary warning. You know, there's a lot of sexual profanity as well. Anyway, so just be prepared if you watch the movie. It's
on that note, I have to ask this.
Yeah.
Is the head called the head for the reason that I think it is?
I don't know.
Okay.
I honestly don't know. But that's what we call it. We call it, can we use the head?
Anyway.
Well, we don't say that exactly, but...
Yeah. No, I will say...
to use the head.
No, I will say all the verbal abuses in the movie, like we're saying, is for the purpose of realism. I mean, that's to make you as the viewer feel like you're there, and it works for the movie. You know, one of my first questions is, so there's a scene with we're all standing on their foot lockers. And they're getting they're holding their hands out like this. They're getting examined, and then my question is, so in the scene, Pyle gets his footlockers unlocked. I was watching a reaction to that scene by a Marine, and he said that if you had an unlocked footlocker, like they would cuss you out like nobody's business.
Unlocked footlockers were for some unknown reason the most thing people get reamed out for. It is insane.
And they said,
absolutely insane. I don't know why. We came back from like a chow or something. There's 3 footlockers locked onto people's racks. It's like...